Okay, so today we're diving deep right into the heart of Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet,
Yeah, absolutely. A classic.
a classic. But we're not just doing like a general overview, right? We're
Yeah.
really looking at the characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've got so much material to work with here, right? It's not just about like who they are, but what makes them tick.
Yeah. Yeah. What are their motivations? What are the relationships like? How does Shakespeare use language to really bring these characters to life?
Yeah, and what about like the big moments, the turning points?
The turning points, absolutely.
And of course, like how does this all tie into the themes of the play,
I
right?
guess big ideas.
Yeah, and we've even got some really, really common questions that people always ask about these characters. So I mean, think of this as like your express lane to really understanding who these people are.
Exactly. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
it's it's like a cheat sheet to really understand the characters, appreciate the nuances of this tragedy and why it's still so relevant today, centuries later.
Mm,
I mean, we're talking about a play written over 400 years ago,
crazy.
and it's still performed and studied all over the world.
Yeah, and a big part of that is understanding, what drives these characters, right? Like what makes a Romeo, what makes a Juliet. Because when you get that, I think you unlock these really powerful ideas that Shakespeare is exploring about, like what happens when our own desires, like our own individual wants, clash with what society or our family
Eh,
expects of us. It's all there in these characters.
Absolutely. It's that tension between the individual and the expectations, the pressures of society.
Yeah, so we're gonna focus on the main group here, right?
Right.
Romeo Montague, Juliet Capulet. We've got Friar Lawrence, the nurse,
Yeah, Mercutio. Can't forget Mercutio.
Mercutio, the life of the party.
The witty one.
Yeah, and then Tybalt,
Yeah.
who's always looking for a fight.
Yeah, he's a bit of a hothead. And then, of course, we've got to talk about the parents, right?
Yeah.
Lord and Lady Capulet, Lord and Lady Montague.
Yeah, the heads of these feuding families.
Exactly. And then, of course, we've got Paris, the suitor,
Yeah, the guy who was to marry Juliet,
to marry Juliet, and finally Prince Aeschylus,
the voice of authority.
the ruler of Verona. Right. So these are the players in our drama. These are the people that make this story, this tragedy, come to life. So let's start by really getting to know them. Who are these people?
All right, so let's start with our main man, Romeo Montague, right? He's a young guy, a teenager, son of Lord and Lady Montague.
And he's in love, or at least he thinks he is.
Oh, he's all about the drama when it comes to love. Remember, the play starts with him like head over heels for Rosaline, right? But then
Rosalind, yeah.
but then he sees Juliet at this Capulet party, and boom, Rosaline's forgotten, and he's completely smitten with Juliet. Yeah, it's like a light switch, right? He's on, he's off, on off. But I guess that kind of tells us something about Romeo, doesn't it? He's impulsive.
Totally. He's ruled by his emotions, his passions, and that's going to have some serious consequences, as we'll see. He doesn't really think things through, does he? He just kind of dives right in.
Head first. And speaking of diving in, let's talk about Juliet Capulet. So she's young, right? Barely 14.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine being told who you're going to marry at 14? I mean, her parents, Lord and Lady Capulet, they've already decided she's going to marry this Count Paris.
Yeah, like her life is basically planned out for her. And, you might think, okay, she's young, she's going to just do what her parents say. But Juliet is not like that. She's got this inner strength.
Oh, she's feisty.
Yeah, she's feisty. And she's determined, especially when it comes to her feelings for Romeo. I mean, to fall for a Montague in the middle of this huge family feud.
Oh yeah, that takes guts. That's a big no-no.
Talk about forbidden love. Okay, so we've got our star-crossed lovers. Let's call him a well-meaning, but maybe not so bright character, Friar Lawrence. He's a monk, right?
Yeah, Franciscan friar. He's a friend to Romeo, kind of like a mentor,
Yeah.
a confidant.
Yeah, a wise old advisor kind of figure.
Yeah, but there's also this irony, right? Because he's trying to do good. He really wants to end this feud between the families.
Yeah, he thinks he can solve it.
Exactly. So he agrees to secretly marry Romeo and Juliet, thinking, oh, this will bring everyone together. But does it?
Spoiler alert, no,
No.
it doesn't.
In fact, you could argue that his actions, his meddling, actually make things worse. I mean, maybe he was a little naive, thinking that a marriage could just erase all that hatred.
Yeah, it's a bit like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, right? It's not going to be enough.
Not even close. Okay, now let's talk about the nurse. She's been with Juliet since she was a baby. Practically a mother figure, really. especially because Juliet's relationship with her own mother is a little more
Yeah, it's a bit more
distant.
distant, yeah, a bit formal.
And the nurse, she's the comic relief, right? She's got this earthy humor.
Oh yeah, she's always got a funny comment.
She's always got something to say, doesn't she? And she knows all about Romeo and Juliet, their secret romance. She helps them out, passes messages back and forth.
Yeah, she's like their go-between.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then she kind of changes her tune. She tells Juliet to forget about Romeo and marry Paris. And that's a huge betrayal for Juliet.
Yeah, at least you're completely alone. Okay, now for a character that's always fun to talk about, Mercutio. He's Romeo's best bud.
Yeah, and he's related to Prince Aeschylus. But he's cynical, right? Especially when it comes to love.
Oh, he's the ultimate cynic. Always ready with a joke.
Yeah, but even though he makes fun of Romeo's, lovey-dovey stuff, you can tell he really cares about him.
Yeah, and he proves it right when he defends Romeo against Tybalt.
Yeah, that's a turning point, isn't it? That duel. Mercutio gets killed, and everything just gets a whole lot darker.
Yeah, it's like the play takes a sharp turn toward tragedy.
Absolutely. And that brings us to, well, the guy who kind of starts that whole mess, Tybalt, Juliet's cousin, and he hates Montagues, like really hates them.
He's got a serious grudge.
Oh, he's all about family honor and defending the Capulet name. He sees Romeo at the party and wants to fight him right then and there.
Yeah, he's a powder keg. And then, of course, he kills Mercutio, and Romeo gets his revenge.
Yeah, and that revenge, it leads to Romeo's banishment. So, Tybalt's actions, they have a ripple effect.
They set off a whole chain of events that we can trace right back to him. Okay, so let's talk about the heads of these feuding families, right? Lord Capulet, Juliet's dad. He seems reasonable at first, He says Paris should wait to marry Juliet, let her have some say.
Yeah, he's not like a complete tyrant in the beginning.
But then, after Tybalt's death, he does a complete 180. He wants Juliet to marry Paris right away, and when she refuses, oh boy, he's furious.
Yeah, he threatens to disown her. It's like a switch flips, and we see this really controlling, tyrannical side to him.
Yeah, he's all about his power and authority. Now, Lady Capulet, Juliet's mom, she's a bit different. She seems more interested in social status, climbing the social ladder.
Oh, yeah. She wants the best for her daughter, at least in her mind. And to her, that means marrying a wealthy, powerful man like Paris. And she's pretty cold about Romeo after he kills Tybalt.
Yeah, she wants revenge. Now, on the other side, we have Lord Montague, Romeo's dad. He's not as prominent a figure as Lord Capulet, but you can tell he's worried about Romeo, especially at the beginning when Romeo's all mopey and sad.
Yeah, he's definitely concerned about his son. But it's at the end, when the full weight of the tragedy hits him that you really see his grief.
Yeah, and he's willing to end the feud. It's too late, of course, but it shows just how pointless it all was.
Absolutely. And then there's Lady Montague, Romeo's mom. She's heartbroken about Romeo's banishment. And in fact, she dies from grief.
Yeah, it's like the feud just keeps claiming victims, even indirectly. It's just this poison that spreads.
And speaking of trying to stop the spread of poison, we have Benvolio, Romeo's cousin. He's always the voice of reason, right? Always trying to keep the peace.
Yeah, he tries to figure out what's wrong with Romeo at the beginning, and he's always trying to stop those street brawls. He's the level-headed one in the group.
Totally. He's like, guys, can we just chill out? But nobody listens.
Nobody listens. Now, we've also got Paris, who, he wants to marry Juliet, but it's more about what it would mean for him, right? Social status, wealth.
Yeah, he's not really interested in Juliet for who she is. He sees her as a prize, a way to elevate himself.
Yeah, a trophy wife. And finally, we have Prince Aeschylus, the ruler of Verona. He's the one who's trying to keep order, trying to stop the violence between the families.
Yeah, he keeps warning them, if you keep fighting, there will be consequences. But his words don't seem to have much effect.
No, they don't. And in the end, he loses two of his own kinsmen, Mercutio and Paris, because of this feud. His final speech is really powerful, It's a condemnation of all this hatred and violence.
Yeah, he's basically saying, look what you've done. This is the result of your actions. So we've got all these characters, right? But what makes them do what they do? What are their motivations?
Yeah, let's dive into that. Romeo, for example, is clearly driven by love, or at least what he perceives as love.
Right, but it's not just love. It's this intense, passionate love that consumes him.
Yeah.
First with Rosalind, and then even more so with Juliet. And it's not just the feeling, it's his actions. He's impulsive. He acts without thinking. And then after Mercutio's death, there's this need for revenge.
Yeah, he's not afraid to take action, even if it's reckless.
Exactly. And then of course there's his despair when he thinks Juliet's dead. I mean, he's a roller coaster of emotions.
And Juliet, well, she's driven by love too, right? But it's also about breaking free from the expectations that are placed on her. She wants to choose her own path.
Yeah, she's not content to just sit back and let her parents dictate her life. Her love for Romeo gives her this strength, this courage to defy them. And she's fiercely loyal, and she's willing to take risks, big risks, to be with Romeo. That whole plan with the sleeping potion,
Oh yeah, that's risky.
it's a gamble, but she's desperate.
Now, Mercutio, he's a bit more complex, right? He's cynical about love, but he's also fiercely loyal to Romeo. He wants his friend to be happy.
Yeah, he might tease Romeo about being all lovey-dovey, but when it comes down to it, he's there for him. He's willing to fight for him, even die for him.
And Tybalt, well, he's driven by hatred.
Pure and simple.
Yeah.
He hates the Montagues. He's all about family honor, and he sees any Montague as a threat, and he's not afraid to act on that hatred.
He's quick to anger, quick to violence. Now, Friar Lawrence, he wants to end the feud, right? He thinks Romeo and Juliet's marriage can be this symbol of peace.
Yeah, his heart's in the right place. He cares about Romeo and Juliet, and he genuinely wants to see peace in Verona. But he goes about it in a really questionable way.
Yeah, all that secrecy, it just creates more problems.
And he underestimates how deep the hatred runs between the families.
Yeah, he's a bit naive. Now, the nurse, she just wants Juliet to be happy. At least that's her initial motivation.
Yeah, she's been like a mother to Juliet, so she wants what's best for her. But then she gets scared. She starts thinking about what's practical, what's safe for Juliet. And that leads her to advise Juliet to marry Paris.
Yeah, which feels like a huge betrayal to Juliet.
It is. She essentially abandons Juliet when she needs her the most.
Lord Capulet, well, he's motivated by power and control. He wants things done his way, and he sees Juliet's refusal to marry Paris as a challenge to his authority.
Yeah, he's the patriarch. He's the head of the family, and he expects to be obeyed.
And Lady Capulet, she's all about social status. She wants to see her daughter married to a wealthy, powerful man.
Yeah, she's ambitious. She wants to climb the social ladder.
So we've got all these different motivations, all these desires clashing with each other. And that leads us to the relationships, right? Because these characters aren't just individuals. They're connected to each other in all these complex ways.
And those connections, those relationships, they're the heart of the play. I mean, the most important relationship, of course, is between Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, their love is what drives everything. It's this passionate, all-consuming love.
Yeah, it's the kind of love that people dream about. But it's also a dangerous love. It's forbidden. It's set against the backdrop of this intense hatred between their families.
And that hatred makes their love even more powerful, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It's like the more forbidden it is, the more they want it. And Romeo's friendship with Mercutio, that's important too. They're so different, but they're such good friends.
Yeah, Mercutio with his cynicism, Romeo with his romanticism.
And their banter is hilarious. But then Mercutio dies, and it's like a punch in the gut.
Yeah, it's a turning point. It shows that this feud has real consequences. It can lead to death.
And Romeo's relationship with Friar Lawrence, that's complicated, right?
Yeah, the friar means well, but his actions have some pretty bad consequences.
He's like the meddling uncle who thinks he knows best. But he creates a lot of problems with his secrecy and his schemes.
And Juliet's relationship with the nurse, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, they're so close, but then the nurse betrays Juliet, tells her to forget about Romeo.
Yeah, and that leaves Juliet feeling utterly alone. And of course, we have to talk about the Capulet-Montague feud. That's the central conflict of the play, right? It's this irrational hatred that's been going on for who knows how long.
And nobody even remembers why they're fighting anymore. It's just this inherited hatred that's been passed down through generations.
It's like a disease.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Juliet's relationship with Tybalt, her cousin, that's interesting too.
Yeah, because Tybalt hates Romeo, but Juliet loves him.
So she's caught in the middle. She's torn between her family and the man she loves.
And the planned marriage between Juliet and Paris, that represents everything that Romeo and Juliet are fighting against.
Yeah, it's about societal expectations, arranged marriages, doing what your parents tell you.
Yeah, it's about not having a choice. And finally, we have Prince Aeschylus, who represents law and order. He's trying to stop the feud, but he ultimately fails.
He can't control the hatred, the violence.
It's too deeply ingrained.
Yeah, the feud has a life of its own. And it's all connected. These relationships, they all feed into each other. One action leads to another, and it all spirals towards this tragic end.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect. So let's talk about some of those key moments, those turning points. It all starts with Romeo's decision to go to that Capulet party, right?
Oh, yeah, that's the catalyst. If he hadn't gone, he wouldn't have met Juliet.
And then their secret marriage. That's a huge decision. It's an act of defiance.
And it's also the beginning of all the secrecy and deception.
Yeah, which never ends well. And then Tybalt kills Mercutio, and that changes everything.
It's the point of no return. The violence escalates, and Romeo tastes his revenge.
And that leads to his banishment.
Which separates him from Juliet.
And then Lord Capulet decides that Juliet has to marry Paris immediately.
Which puts Juliet in an impossible position.
And she goes to Friar Lawrence for help.
And he comes up with this crazy plan with the sleeping potion.
Which relies on everything going exactly right. And of course it doesn't.
The letter doesn't get delivered.
Romeo doesn't know that Juliet's not really dead.
And he kills himself.
And then Juliet wakes up and finds Romeo dead and
kills herself.
It's just this chain of events, this series of bad decisions and bad luck.
Yeah, it's fate and free will all mixed together.
So Shakespeare's really good at plotting, right? But he's also a master of language. How does he use language to bring these characters to life? Well, Romeo, when he talks about Juliet, it's all poetry, metaphors, similes.
He's totally smitten. He says she doth teach the torches to burn bright, and that she hangs upon the cheek of night like a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Isn't it? He's comparing her to light, to jewels. He's putting her on a pedestal.
And Juliet's language evolves throughout the play, right?
Yeah, at first she's obedient. She speaks like a dutiful daughter. But then she meets Romeo, and her language becomes more passionate, more assertive.
Her famous balcony speech, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?"
Yeah, that's where she really comes into her own. She's challenging Romeo, she's challenging her family, she's challenging society.
And Mercutio, he's all about wit and puns.
His Queen Mab speech is a classic. It's this long, rambling speech about a fairy who controls people's dreams. But it's also a way for Mercutio to show off his intelligence, his cynicism.
Yeah, he's the smart aleck of the group. And Tybalt, his language is aggressive, confrontational.
Yeah, he's always ready for a fight. He says, "This, by his voice, should be a Montague. Fetch me my rapier, boy."
He's all about action, not words.
Exactly. And the nurse, her language is very different. It's more colloquial, more down to earth.
Yeah, she's like the funny aunt who always tells embarrassing stories.
And that contrast with the other characters' language is really interesting. It shows her social status, her relationship with Juliet.
So Shakespeare uses language really effectively to create these different personalities.
Yeah, and to explore the themes of the play.
And what are some of those themes? Well, obviously love is a big one. Romantic love, passionate love, love that defies all odds.
Yeah, Romeo and Juliet's love is the driving force of the play. It's what makes them risk everything.
And then there's hate, represented by the feud, by Tybalt.
The feud is this destructive force that destroys everything in his path. It's senseless, it's pointless.
And fate plays a role too, right?
Definitely. There are all these moments where it seems like fate is working against Romeo and Juliet. The missed letter, the timing of everything.
And family conflict is a big theme. The power dynamics between parents and children.
Yeah, Lord Capulet and Juliet, that's a prime example. He's trying to control her, and she rebels.
And then there's the theme of youth, the impulsiveness of youth.
Romeo and Juliet are so young. They make decisions without thinking about the consequences.
And those decisions lead to tragedy. So what do experts say about these characters? What are some of the critical interpretations?
Well, Romeo is often seen as a classic tragic hero.
You know, the guy who's doomed from the start.
Yeah, he has a tragic flaw, his impulsiveness, and that flaw leads to his downfall.
And Juliet, she's often seen as a strong, independent character.
Yeah, she's not just a passive victim. She makes choices, even if those choices are ultimately tragic.
And Mercutio, he's the cynic, the realist.
He represents a different perspective on love.
Yeah.
He's the one who says, hey, this romantic stuff isn't all it's cracked up to be.
And Tybalt, he's the embodiment of the feud.
Yeah, he's all about hatred and violence.
Yeah.
He's the fuel that keeps the fire burning.
And Friar Lawrence, he's a bit of a controversial figure, right?
Yeah, some people think he's well-intentioned but makes some bad decisions. Others think he's more to blame for the tragedy.
And the nurse, she's also complicated. Is she a betrayer or just trying to protect Juliet?
It's up for debate, but her actions definitely have a big impact on Juliet's choices.
And Lord Capulet, he's often seen as representing the patriarchal society of the time.
Yeah, he's the one in control, and he doesn't want to give up that control.
And the feud itself, it's a symbol of the destructive power of hate.
It shows how hatred can poison everything, how it can destroy lives.
So let's do a quick recap. Who are the main characters in Romeo and Juliet?
Romeo Juliet, Friar Lawrence, the nurse, Mercutio, Tybalt, Lord Capulet, Lady Capulet, and Prince Aeschylus.
And what are their main motivations?
Romeo and Juliet are motivated by love, but also by a desire for freedom and autonomy. The friar wants to end the feud. The nurse wants what's best for Juliet, even if she's not sure what that is. Lord Capulet is motivated by power and control. Lady Capulet wants social status. Tybalt is driven by hatred, and Prince Aeschylus wants to maintain order.
What are some of the factors that contribute to Romeo and Juliet's deaths?
Fate, the feud, their own impulsiveness, and Friar Lawrence's meddling.
How does Romeo's love for Juliet differ from his initial infatuation with Rosaline?
His love for Juliet is much deeper, more passionate, more transformative.
Why does the nurse change her mind about Romeo and Juliet's relationship?
She's afraid for Juliet's safety and future.
Why is Mercutio's death such a turning point in the play?
It escalates the violence and leads to Romeo's banishment.
How does Tybalt's aggression contribute to the tragedy?
His hatred and willingness to fight fuel the feud and lead to Romeo's revenge.
What is Friar Lawrence's role in the play?
He marries Romeo and Juliet in secret and comes up with the plan with the sleeping potion.
What are the motivations behind the Capulet-Montague feud?
Family honor, tradition, and a long-standing hatred that no one really remembers the cause of.
What does Paris represent in the play?
Societal expectations and the pressure to marry for status.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, but hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the characters in Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, these characters are more than just names on a page. They're complex individuals with their own desires, fears, and motivations.
And it's by understanding those desires, those fears, those motivations that we can truly appreciate the power and the tragedy of this timeless story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, I want to leave you with this. Think about all the characters we've talked about today. Think about their choices, their relationships, the forces that shape their lives. And ask yourself this: is anyone truly to blame for the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet? Or is it something bigger, something more systemic, something that even today we still struggle to understand?
Food for thought. Until next time, happy reading.